When we're speaking about the occupant of the Office of General Executive, there are a number of people who have spoken about the role of executor. And I have paid homage to them in the past, and I won't name them now. For some reason, they have not extended their knowledge to recognising that there are many roles of executors within the Roman system. Many roles, and we identify them, in fact, in positive law. And if you want to look at the different roles that there are in terms of executor, please go to one-heaven.org, then go to positive law, and then go down to, let me call it up so I can find it, to Article 270, executor. So go to one-heaven.org, go on to positive law, and then go on to Article 270 in terms of executor. And what you'll see under Canon 3048 is that there are at least 6 different types of executor that are recognised in their system. Executor generalis, or the general executor. Executor ab episcopo constitutus. That's a bit of a mouthful. Who are they? Well, that's the ecclesiastically appointed executor dative appointed to oversee probate, to administer an estate where they did not leave a will. There you go. We have executor testamarius, testamentary executor. We have executor nominatum. We have executor lucratus. Of course, we have executor de sanctor. So there's a range of different roles of executor. Now, there is a danger always, and I don't know why this has been a theme, but it has been a theme. There's a danger always that when people don't say things right, if people include their own presumptions, that it causes people to get into great difficulty. Now, there's 2 ways that they do that, where they put people into great difficulty. One is they claim their own forms as the remedy. They claim a private form will be recognised in a public manner in the Roman system. They claim a private form will be recognised in a public manner in the Roman system. And I'll tell you that that is the biggest proof of being incompetent, of being an idiot and a lunatic you could possibly do to the Roman system. To come up with a private document and try and get it recognised in the public manner. Now, when we did the ecclesiastical deed polls, I made it clear to everyone that prior to the work we have now done in Will and Testament, prior to the work we have now done in recognising what the certificate of acknowledgement is and the records in the system, prior to this forensic work, the ecclesiastical deed poll is a private document issued under private law, issued under the laws and statutes of one heaven. And in no way did we ever claim that that private document could be viewed as a public document in their system. What we would do with the ecclesiastical nature of it to appeal to the private side of the system, that is, taking it out of the public arena and meeting in chambers. Now, it was meant in many ways, and one of the ways the ecclesiastical deed poll did, it was a historic turning point at the end of the age of Mithra. It was ending the claim that blood, that they have any legitimacy and superiority in their instruments, but it was never intending to pretend to be a prescribed form of statute. Individuals take a prescribed form and play with it and break it outside of its prescribed form. It is no longer a public document in their system, it is in a private form. And if you try and lodge private forms into the public, then this is where so many people get into trouble. That's why if the name of a form is called a deed, it's a deed. If the name of the form is a certificate, it's a certificate. If there are prescribed words, those are the minimum words that must be present. Minimum. Not maximum, not only, but minimum words that must be on the document. So yes, there are examples, and many examples of people over time who've got into serious trouble with knowledge. But the most common failure is that it's because people have promoted private form into claiming that it will be accepted in a public forum where it won't be. Now, I want to talk about administrative law, fiduciary law before we still get to birth certificate and promissory notes. The frustration that many have had when they go to court is they go in there and say, I will bind you to your oath and I appoint you a fiduciary, and the judge just laughs and continues on. And I know that this has been a frustration over years, if not decades, and I want to explain to you how this works. If you go and have a look, and this has come out of the forensic research that we're doing in completing UK, if you go and have a look, you find that the penultimate law that underpins the corporate system in terms of their procedures is what they call administrative law. To the point that we see the word administrator as one who is appointed by an executor and don't think twice. We think it's normal. And when we talk about trusts and we talk about the obligations of being a trustee, we call that trust law. We've almost forgotten this word fiduciary. This word fiduciary is almost removed from our comprehension. And yet, before the role of the agent and agency was introduced in the 19th century, before they raised administrative law above fiduciary law, which states in its opening premise that fiduciary law, the trustee must serve the interests of others ahead of themselves, the interests of the beneficiaries ahead of their own interests. That was the law in which all the trusts administered. But when they introduced the concept for the corporate system of the agent through letters patent and through warrant, they created the concept that the executor could issue their powers to a particular man or woman or particular person for a prescribed period of time, so it was a forming of a temporary trust, and in that process they would indemnify them. There was no obligation in that model at all. There is no obligation in that model to serve your interest ahead of theirs, to serve the interest of the beneficiary ahead of theirs. So it's a perfect marriage. It means an agent has the powers that they need from the executor, and they are indemnified by the executor to do their job. So when we encounter a judge that is fulfilling a role that is defined by deed or trust, and so that they are holding a fiduciary role, they are also appointed as an agent. And unless you remove the presumptions of agent first, you cannot get to their fiduciary obligations. Unless you remove the presumptions of agency first, you cannot get to them in terms of binding them to perform their fiduciary obligations. And this is how all officials are getting away with almost blue murder because of the agency role. Well, how do you get rid of the agency role? We've mentioned this before, and I'll just quickly run through it before we get on to these other things. To remove the agency role, there are two presumptions of agency. One is, if you attend court, the presumption is you're accepting the judge as your agent. The judge is there, got their sign up, the agent. The judge is sitting there as a private contractor, open for business, and is there to arbitrate. The presumption is that you have appointed them as your agent. So to defeat that presumption, one states, I do not recognize you, I do not acknowledge you, and in no way have I appointed you my agent. But there's a second presumption. Remember I said that agents are appointed by letters patent or warrant. So the second presumption is that they have been granted by letters patent some agency powers from a higher power. So we would follow, unless you can produce here now the warrant or patent under which you are claiming agency authority, I refuse to recognize or acknowledge that you have any agency or agent jurisdiction. And so now we move on to the fiduciary. But as you are appointed into a fiduciary position, I hereby bind you to your oath and appoint you fiduciary, or call on your fiduciary obligations to hear this matter. That's a bit of a mouthful. We'll go through it again. I do not recognize you. I do not acknowledge you. In no way have I appointed you my agent. And unless you can produce for me this moment the warrant or patent upon which you claim authority, and I might see to whom the executor who makes that authority, and by what claim the executor makes that authority, I do not recognize you, or do not acknowledge you in any way as an agent having jurisdiction. But as you're an elected official, I bind you to your oath, and I call on you to serve in your fiduciary capacity. Now, there isn't a judge, or it could be a county recorder, or it could be a prosecutor, it could be any of those roles, because they're all doing this double game. They've got agency powers and they've got fiduciary powers. Anyone in those positions will know clearly what you've done. The game is up. They know that. Or a policeman, or a sheriff, or a bailiff on your property. They know. But as we started tonight, I want to come back to it. This is the difference between Eucadia and people who take this information and steal it, claim it as their own. Because here we're trying to explain the provenance, the logic, the why. Why is this important? Why does this work? Why are they getting away with it, as opposed to simply blindly pointing to it? I hope when you listen to this tape again, or those who are listening tonight, re-listen later, that you will hear this again and you will see how important this is. And you've got to extinguish any presumption of agency before you can get to fiduciary. Okay.
Yeah, we were listening to Mr. Franco Collins. Very brilliant man. So I had nothing to do with that video, but I just want to share that with everyone. Fantastic gentleman. Did serious research most of his life and put most of his money for like a retirement and all of that into getting an understanding and to getting it out in to the men and women in the world. And when he mentions Eucadia, that's a society that he put together, and he put together things that were positive and that were correct and were not fraud. So that's a little tidbit of his stuff, approximately 13 minutes. This gentleman has around 120 audios on TalkShoe, if you could find it on TalkShoe. It was fantastic. That actual recording was it was TalkShoe number 549148. If you put that in TalkShoe, if you're familiar with that, it'll come up when the site comes up, and it'll have a judge sitting on a bench and with a gavel in his hand, and on that site you put that number in and you'll find that whole audio. Now that gentleman is like off the chart. He rewrote how society should be with canons of law and all kinds of things. So the things that he's saying, when you take a look at that, the things that he's saying about how the system or the people at the courthouse that's administrating every one of us, how to take away their power. Now if you go back and you outline this and you see what he says, now he has a strange accent because he's from Australia, but if you listen very closely, you will see a method of breaking the chains, of the proper things to do and the proper ways to do it. and how it's so complicated, but he makes it seem so simple. And it's critical that, you know, I'm running into just unbelievably smart individuals. If you can't break this down and you can't do the simple of the simple, you're going to have problems. And that's why when you walk into an administration or you volunteer into it, you better know how to volunteer yourself right back out that door. Because, you know, it's like quicksand, and I say that all the time. They will suck you into it, and they have these imaginary powers only because you're seeing all these negative things on television, the negative things on the radio, and all the drama that's going on. And it puts you in a different frequency than you should have. If you're a man or a woman and you're real, you should always try to do the right things. We know what the right things are. We know. But when it comes to their system and their language and their legalese, this gentleman, Frank O. Collins, says it better than anyone I've ever heard. And that's why I'm sharing this. And all the credit goes to this man. And once you break this down and you see what he's saying, it's fantastic. So I want to get that out to you as my message today. I want to point out that he does have approximately 120 videos or audios. If you look him up on TalkShoe and use that number that I gave you for that specific video or that audio, he has more. So once you find where to get that at, you know, you might want to download those, and you might want to check out all of his stuff. He has fantastic stuff. Now that was basically on the different types of executor and how to take away their power as agent and then fiduciary, or to show that they have fiduciary duty. Fiduciary duty, in my understanding, they can't be relieved of that duty until they settle the issue. Even their own personal issues, like vacation, you know, which they take how many times a year. You know, they have to put you first and foremost if you understand the things that Mr. Franco Collins is telling you. So I couldn't say it even close to what the gentleman says it, so I just did a little snippet of his video. I hope that you like this and it's very informative and you get some very good information that will cause you to rebut their presumptions and put them in the right position and show them the jig is up, and then they will want out of that case and they will want this over with and they will let you go. Now it's all there, but it's up to you to do your own due diligence to discover and write down and take very serious notes and get an understanding, and understand it by repetition. Reading it over and over and over and saying it will get you to memorize it, and that's what I suggest that you do with several things that he said. So that's all I got for you for today. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and please tickle my donate button if possible. We'll talk to you soon.